they can show up how they are. A lot of times I'm not seeing people on their favorite day or what they feel is their best day. And so I want for people to be able to feel like they're walking into a space that is ready to hold that, and that that's okay. That just as they are in the midst of what they're going through is how they can show up, and showing up is what counts. And when they do show up, I want them to encounter somebody on the other side of the conversation, because it is a conversation a lot of times, that is warm and present and ready and willing to work with them where they're at. Come alongside people when they are figuring out what they're going to do to make a change in their lives. And they don't always know what that's going to be or how that's going to unfold. And that can be a really scary process. And so it feels like a real privilege to get to sit with somebody as they unfold. And so that people don't feel alone in that. I think that's a real gift of therapy, that you can have a place and a setting to see what the next move is. Because a lot of times what's happening is that what worked in other settings to help us survive is not working anymore. And like, what do you do with that? And so having a safe place and time to figure that out is a really special kind of environment and relationship. And I don't see that happen in a lot of other places in the world, and a lot of other spaces in the world. And so it feels like a really sacred space in that way. And I like being in that space with people. They've been doing the strategies or the parts of themselves that they relied on to get them through aren't quite fitting or working the way they need them to anymore. And sometimes that is caused by a shift in environment. Something has changed, a baby is born, a loved one dies, a relationship ends or changes, something unexpected happens, and that shifts everything else. And so the ways that we've gone about surviving and working through aren't working anymore. And that leaves people feeling lost and sometimes alone. And so some part of them is ready to make a shift in that moment. And so I meet people in that moment. And they kind of find me in this space and time as a place to figure out, okay, that's not been working, so what will? And things like the latest brain research and nervous system research and what we understand about relationships and attachment science can be a real gift to try new things, and that helps. In the session, it depends on which session. So therapy is a process. So at the beginning, there's a couple of things that happen. Some family history happens, although we're not going around searching, like diving deep necessarily out the gate. We're doing some history because nobody exists in a vacuum. Like, everybody is a product of all their relationships and all the systems that they've lived in. And so learning about those systems can be really helpful. But in an actual like therapy session, while we'll take some history and some background, what's happening is a conversation where they can show up with what they have going on that day. And we start right from there. What do you want to talk about? Where do you want to begin today? And every session pretty much starts out, where do you want to begin today? And it may touch on these older things or hopes for the future, and strategies and plans, or old memories. But it centers around where the client is living in that moment. And so it's a conversation back and forth that's interactive. The most challenging part of therapy, I think, for a lot of people, one is the decision to do it, the decision to show up, because that is a big deal, because you're acknowledging some part of you is ready to do some work. Because the thing about therapy is you get out of it what you put into it. And then the realization that once you've made the appointment and showing up, that, oh, I have to put in and what will that be? And that's a really big risk out the gate, because you're going to go meet with somebody and sit with somebody and be vulnerable to some degree. And to be willing to risk that can be a real challenging thing for some folks. And so that's why it's so important that when you sit with a therapist, that they are responsive and that they're doing everything that they can to create safety and warmth and approachability. And so those are my goals when I'm sitting with somebody, is that they feel like you showed up and so am I. And that from here together, you're not alone in the process of figuring out what's next. And then that makes all the other like challenges or risks that you take in the process of therapy a little less intimidating, is that you're not alone in that.